Good morning, you two American gaming enthusiasts. And yes, sometimes the fat guy eats popcorn for breakfast. This is leftovers from the movie theater. We went to see. The wife and I went out and seen Ghost in the Shell. Was fairly disappointed, both because of the hideous cost of an extra pop, and second because the movie was, I don't know, I almost fell asleep in it. Uh, could have been better, but hey, I don't care about that. One player campaigns. Come on. As a GM, at some point, you probably ran into this. When I was a kid, when I was younger, when we first started playing D&D, when I was in my early teens, this was a problem that was a problem that wasn't. I mean, my friend Richie Gilson and myself, we were nerd beyond nerd when it comes to this stuff. We had a couple other friends, but they just didn't get into this stuff the way we did, and we lived it. And we played, just the two of us, every day after school, all summer long, every opportunity, and it just grew until we got into our later teens, high school, and young ladies and work and other things started to intervene, and we kind of went our separate ways. But the concept still stuck with me. It's possible and quite doable for a GM and a player to have to play. You can have a one player campaign or a two player campaign. The challenges are different from a larger group, and that having a big group is a different subject for another time. And the average medium group is between 4 and 5 players. Three is usually considered the lower end of it, and two or less is undoable or unworkable in some people's minds. And I don't agree with that. I think this is just me personally. I think that the smaller groups, the intimacy levels increase. One, two people. I prefer 2 to 3 people. I can do four. You know, but two or three is good, and one can be an issue if the player. I guess it's based on the player. If you got a guy who desperately needs to be the follower, he's not going to be an alpha dog player. He needs to be the beta dog and needs somebody else to take the lead. Then it might be a problem because then the GM has to basically pull him by the nose through every situation and everything and get and work him constantly to get him to respond and to act in some playable manner. That is a challenge. On the other hand, if you can get a good player, and I've had some great guys that can handle being into a small group. One of my most, I guess, more recent versions of that, and was a campaign I called Two Dwarves in a Wagon. It had 2 players, and we didn't have anything else better to do. Couldn't get any other players, or I think we had 1 or 2 drop in and drop out, but for a while there it was just the two of us. So I ran a campaign that ran for about 5 months, 6 months, once a week. I called it Two Dwarves in a Wagon. The premise and what there was, these 2 young dwarves were starting out, and they had the base stuff, first level characters with what the gold piece allotment they were allotted and whatever they could afford. And they got hired on as drivers, a driver and a guard for a Teamster outfit at a dwarven citadel, and their job basically was to drive this wagon full of supplies and deliver it to the mining outposts and surrounding little villages in the area. And this allowed me to have a narrow playground, if you will, and set up reoccurring adventures, which actually worked out well. I think I've talked about that in at least one other blog about the Bogle situation. And the characters themselves, they developed, they grew, they got some experience, they got some more equipment. Eventually, our group dynamic changed, and usually whenever that occurs, it's just better to retire the particular game campaign and go back and start a new thing, which is what we did. But this one ran for about 5 or 6 months, and it was quite interesting. And the sad part, of course, is when we walked out of it, was there was a lot of left unanswered stuff and unsolved situations that left us wondering, hey, I wonder what would have happened if we'd have continued, or if we'd have managed to get that done, or whatever. And so that tells me that we had a good, enjoyable campaign, and the two guys were look forward to it every week. And it wasn't as a jam, it wasn't overly complicated or time consuming for me. I didn't have to uh, become very elaborate. And once I set the parameters of the area and stuff, that made it simpler because I could reuse locations over and over again, and a lot of the NPCs. So when they stopped at this particular roadside tavern, the same people were there that were working there the last time they came. The last three times they came through, and the only thing that changed was the other, and travelers on the roads, and course, to liven up that particular game, I created a rival Teamster group, and there was two slightly more experienced, more grizzled dwarves who were running their own Teamster wagon, and they were always trying, not almost always trying to thwart the player characters in some way, in petty ways. They would sabotage their wagon, or they would pay somebody to the guy running the stable to uh, forget to latch the door on the barn, so the horses got away, and the player characters had to go truck through the woods to go catch their horses. Hmm. Ever tried to catch a horse? Ah, I've done it, and it's not so easy when you're on foot. And it make it look easy in the movies, and yet if you know the tricks and you're well familiar with your animals, the animals will respond to you. But if they know you're trying to get them, a lot of times it's a game to them too, and they play it. They play it, so that plays out. And we played that scenario out, and it actually turned into an afternoon session, which, hey, everybody got experience, including the horses. Hmm. Talk about that, but that was also a different vlog. You know, the one player campaign. Some game systems actually lend itself better to this style than larger groups, but not. There are game systems that don't do well with individuals unless your individual's experienced. I mean, you know, we talk about the subject, fantasy role playing in Dungeons and Dragons, but I can. This applies in a lot of other systems. In Star Wars, running a group that has a mixture of player characters, including a would-be Jedi or a Jedi, that becomes an issue because the Jedi tends to move at a different pace and has different abilities than the other guys, and the other guys just end up becoming supporting actors for the primary player, and some of them get butthurt about they don't it doesn't work well. I've learned and done in Star Wars, if I'm going to run that, look, everybody's got to be a Jedi and or a Padawan or something, Jedi related, or you're going to play in a group that doesn't include a Force system. It's just simpler from the GM perspective. It's just simpler. Sometimes it's harder to do that in a fantasy setting, but one of the character classes that come to mind that are best suited for solo play is the assassin. Of course, that can be a dark scenario. If your player, unless your player is into it, you got to be careful because going around and whacking people, it's a bit twisted. But it is a duel. The other side of that is the defender, the warrior who's going to be the bodyguard, and I've played that campaign a couple times where the individual is his sole job, is to protect this person or that person, and so everybody else this player and character encounters is NPCs, and of course there's the urge, and I've done it. We've all probably done it, of loading up a small group with NPCs. We're gonna flush it out by adding NPCs, and so the player picks up a second character to play, and they basically play it half halfway. They don't play it like they play the primary character because this is just Fred. And then the other one is where the GM ends up with having to manage not only the NPCs of the and the bad guys, but the player character NPCs. And once again, they don't have they're two dimensional. They lose flavor and perspective, and they're just a tool. And well, sometimes I've got a group and nobody wanted to be the damn the cleric, and they all want to go out and hack and slash, and none of them's good at healing. Well, I've occasionally thrown in the NPC cleric just so they got a medic. You know, a lot of times the best way to deal with that is just leave the medic sitting at the with the horses. And if they get bad enough, they have to go back to the medic. But I try to avoid that NPC ghost character thing as much as possible. Now, as I've gotten more experience, it's not necessary. Like I said, if you're in your one player campaign, or if you're two player campaign, somebody gets hurt bad enough, for this is where the players need step up using their healing skills, and need to go the extra mile to purchase the healing potions and stuff that they need to help take care of themselves, at least long enough to get back to a local NPC healer. And in the case of the uh, two dwarfs in a wagon, they were easily able to take care of the worst of the stuff. And I think uh, I did not have to resort to the wandering priest coming along and saving them kind of story, which I've done once or twice in the past in other games. Yeah, it happens. And it surely didn't have to have a deity have divine intervention, which I try to avoid at all costs, unless you absolutely have no other options. Can we do one player campaigns? You betcha. They can be enjoyable. Just work at it and keep an open mind when you do.